Yeah, I'm lost and numb, cold to the touch. I pretend like I don't remember your name. Every masterpiece turns to blasphemy. When I close my eyes, yeah, I still see your face. We were the thunder and the lightning, burning fire started from a spark. I would spin you just to watch you twirl. It was us against the world. You were the rain falling on my skin. Yeah, I was dying when you pulled me in. I was your rebel and you were my girl. It was us against the world. Yeah, I'm pale gray, all dust and fade. When I call for you, all I hear back is pain. Every song must end, even diamonds fade. When the darkness comes, I count up my mistakes. We were the thunder and the lightning, burning fire that started from a spark. I would spin you just to watch you twirl. It was us against the world. You were the rain falling on my skin. Yeah, I was dying when you pulled me in. I was your rebel and you were my girl. It was us against the world. We were the thunder and the lightning. I was your rebel and you were my girl. It was us against the world.
I was thinking that maybe when you get back, you could come with me. Fuck work, fall in love right now, and spend all our money. Jump with me. Jump with me. I've been feeling it buzzing in my fingertips. Wanna try you out. Get lost, get far away, and do what we wanna do now. Jump with me. Jump with me.
showing. But yeah, we keep going and going. But it's family forever. We've done it over and over. Will we ever reach the end? How do we get through the night? Do we have to fight? Ever wake ourselves to start the willing night? Maybe we can redefine what it means to get in time. Now we take the chance to fight the fight we seek. We can make a getaway. Understand this the end. Maybe we can break away. Here we stand. Run away before we surrender. Run away before we surrender. We can make a getaway. Understand this the end. Maybe we can break away. Here we stand. Run away before we surrender. We can make a getaway. Understand this the end. Maybe we can break away. Here we stand. Run away before we surrender. Run away before we surrender. Run away before we surrender. Run away before we surrender.
All right, it's Mark, and we're going to get started here for tonight. And so, welcome to our live show. Tonight we have a guest named Don Carlson. And let me get my cameras set up here first. So we got our animation set up here. And where is the webcam? Here we go. Okay. So let me see if I can connect to Don. So we can get started here. Let's see. So we're going to try to use Facebook to talk. And if it works, great. Let's see. All right, let's see how this works out. Okay, got Sparkle Cam and default, got Yeti, allow. Okay. Let's see if Don answers here. I know he's got problems with his microphone, so. Hey, Don, are you there?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. You sound good, too.
Thank you.
What's
I hear you in the background.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, your microphone's really good. So,
Replacing that cord worked.
yeah, oh, that's good. So anyway, now Don Carlson's been on our show before. He's the creator of something called Puppet Putty, which is his own brand of clay for animators. And he's done a lot of stop motion and clay films and has been into stop motion for probably, how many years, Don?
Well, I've been following it since like 94 or even maybe even before that. About 92.
92. That's a long time.
Yeah. And I learned some things along the way.
That's good. That's good that you learned.
Which it's weird and unexpected, but it happened.
Yeah. So let me ask you. I mean, because I know we've probably talked about this before, but what was your main source of inspiration? I mean, was it Will Vinton, pretty much?
Yeah. It was Will Vinton. It was Nightmare Before Christmas. And pretty much everything I could check out at the library. I lived in Seattle, South Seattle, and they had a library, Burien Public Library is where I would go check out books, and sometimes they'd be checked out, and I'd have to wait. I could put on a hold list, but they'd mail them. They used to mail books out. It's pretty cool.
That's nice. So did they actually have any books from like one of the studios there that maybe I've never seen, or?
No, I don't. I don't think that any of the studios put out any books, but there was one that kind of caused me to get an unofficial apprenticeship with Bruce Bickford, who was right there in town, or actually, he was in the next town over. He was like, I'm trying to remember where this was, Des Moines or something like that, or no, SeaTac.
So that's cool. I mean, it's like you've kind of mingled with similar people that I've mingled with over there. Bruce Bickford is probably like the grand wizard, I guess, or something of stop motion. You know,
So you've met him? Have you been to his house?
I have. Yep,
Awesome.
been in his garage and saw all his stuff. In
Yeah, the
fact,
last. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say a few episodes back, I actually made not sure if I could get this on the camera. Let me see here. A Bruce Bickford cardboard storage box. Probably can't really see it, but maybe my audience has probably seen it a few weeks back. But it's just a cardboard box with some shelves hot glued in there and That's basically what Bruce Bickford did, and that, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a super good solution.
Yeah, the last time I talked to him, it was, I think, probably 2 years ago, so I should probably give him a call. But he had me working on kind of this clay glue. He wanted to make his older sculptures stick together better.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and he said he used to use an older brand of clay, which I don't think you can get anymore, but it was extra sticky. And I never figured out how to make that clay glue because any clay that I would make would be temperature sensitive, and what he needs is something that will keep the clay together on a hot day.
I
And I just
see.
don't have anything with a high enough melting point for that.
So,
Uh,
what was his actual goal? Like to
hmm.
glue together the head of a puppet to a body of the puppet or something? Or like what? What do
um,
you mean by that?
and I think it was more like structural reinforcement for some of his sets,
Oh, okay. Yeah, because
especially the older ones.
oh, I see. Yeah, I'm trying to think what clay he used. I know they don't make it anymore. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was like that Pongo stuff or something, or some kind of a. No, I don't think it was Pongo. What was it called? I don't
I'm
think it
not
was
sure.
Avalon either. I think it was something else.
Whatever he told me that he got his clay from just shopping in like the toy stores. That's where he tended to find the newer stuff that
Ah.
came out because it's very much a kids market,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the all the patents and stuff and the improvements in clays tend to go towards children's products.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess he was not able to. He must have bought a lot of it though. He must have been like their number one, buyer of clay because he had tons. When I went there, he had tons of sets and puppets, and some of them
I
were
kind
pretty
of
large.
I kind of wonder if he did have Avalon. I know that he was pretty good friends with Webster Colcord, so and I think that he was using a lot of Avalon at the time. That was one of the early brands. Tony Marathieu sold me some a while
Mm-hmm.
back. I think all of the traditional modeling clays tend to oxidize over time. So every brand will eventually reach a point of no return. Um,
The
and
Avalon, the Avalon that I got from Tony Marathieu lasted, 20 years, and it's still pretty good. I'm actually
yeah,
using it on this film. It's holding up really well.
I think it probably depends on the brand as far as how long it'll last
Yeah,
or how it's formulated, but that's not really known 'cause it's protected under patents and stuff.
yeah, and recently I think you and I kind of talked about how Craft Smart clay
Yeah.
doesn't hold up. It's like it dries out, or I don't know what it does exactly. I don't think it's drying out. I think
uh,
something's happening molecularly there, like um, I don't know what it is, but it turns into a rock after a few years.
yeah, and I can't remember what the stuff Ardman uses
New plast.
by itself. Yeah, the new plast that will turn into chalk in an oven, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I found out that the hard way as well. I tried
Uh,
to melt it in a pan, and it just kind of turns into like you said, like chalk. It kind of gets droopy, but
yeah,
you can't really melt it.
yeah. A friend sent me some a while back, and I did try to melt it in a on a hot plate, and it just refused to go to liquid.
Did it? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like and the different colors behave differently as well. I think the black clay, the black new plast that I have, is probably I'm not gonna say 5 years old, but the flesh colored clay that I had at the same age turned into a rock all by itself, and So I know there's some different formulations in there, depending on the colors.
Hmm.
So
So
yeah,
it's like the magical spell wore off and it turned back into a rock. I guess I don't know.
I guess
Did you try kissing it? No, I'm just kidding.
I should try. Actually, I need to do that. Maybe Bruce Bickford can use some of his magical tea or something and sprinkle it on there.
Magical olive oil.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Bruce is a character. Yeah, I think Brian Prosser sent me a link that he's gaining some interest in like Japan and in Germany. He's getting out there.
oh,
Um,
I see.
but he's not like he's wanting to do projects, but it's like no one's wanting to fund his projects. I don't really know if that's because he's getting kind of old. I hope that he's gonna do something soon.
Yeah, I don't know. Like he's always been kind of an outsider animator, and people who make outsider art always run the risk of not, getting mass appeal. And the same thing I found happens to independent filmmakers who make something in their own vision, and they're not thinking about the audience that's going to see it, and
Mm-hmm.
they make little jokes to themselves, and and then it doesn't get into film festivals because it has no mass appeal. Um, and that's something that plagued a lot of my animation work, and so that's why I kind of got away from that and went more towards just making clay, because
Yeah.
it's an endless challenge to try to improve what you've got already, and it's so sensitive formulaically that I haven't been able to put out a new version of it in a few years now, because it just doesn't work as well. As soon as you try to add something and something else, it just goes off balance. So it might be as good as it gets at this point,
You think so?
or as good as I can do it.
Yeah.
I
Well, I
would
mean,
really.
it works great. I mean, I like it. And like I asked you, and I knew the answer already, but I saw you posted a picture of a flower, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, is there an armature in there? Knowing that the answer would be, there's no armature. It holds up
Yeah.
really, really well.
Yeah. I see Webster's on the chat. Hi, Webster. Um, and he's right. It was Leisure Clay.
Oh, leisure
Um,
clay. Okay.
yeah.
Darn, I always forget the name of that one. I've never used it, so I guess my brain doesn't retain that or for some reason. I
I
wonder if
kind of wonder if.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I
Uh,
kind of wonder if that. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I wonder if anybody can still find that someplace,
Yeah.
like Tony Merithew's stash.
Maybe. I
Here.
know he was really happy to get rid of some clay on eBay. Tony was, because
Frame deleted.
he said he needed the space in his workshop.
Really? Wow. That
Yeah.
stuff is like gold.
Well, yeah, because when I heard that when, or at least Will told us in the claymation class, when the studio, I'm trying to remember, when they stopped kind of really using clay, a lot of it got sold off to animators who worked at the studio. So they bought just a whole bunch and are still working through it. I think Dave Daniels said he has a whole lot too.
Really? Oh man, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I'd love to buy more. I asked Tony recently, and I said, if you have any more of that clay, I'll buy some because I'm working on this film now. And he never replied. So, but I know he's into like cars and restoring vehicles that are turn of the century, and so I'm sure he's just busy. But I was hoping that
Yeah.
he could get me, maybe a few pounds here or there. Let's see here. but no such luck, unfortunately.
Uh, yeah, I think the best place to run into clay people is at like film festivals and stuff like that. Um, and I kind of I kind of regret getting back on the Max and going home. I mean, getting on the train and going home um, after the most recent one I was at was a house special, doing a demonstration of clay animation live in front of the audience.
That's cool. Uh, so what was that all about? Is that like just a local film festival somebody put on, or was that like a spike
It
in the
was
mic or
the
something?
No, it was actually it was the first night of the Northwest Animation Festival,
Oh, okay. I hadn't
just to kick it
heard
off.
about it. That's cool. Yeah, there's so many festivals. I think the Montreal Stop Motion Film Festival has kind of, um, dominated the stop motion festival scene now. They're really big.
Hmm.
So I have not heard much about any others. At least they don't send out press releases to me. Sometimes if they do, I'll kind of post it on the site and let people know about it. But so do you know like who was attending? Was Will Vinton there, or one of the maybe some of the
Mm,
Leica people?
I don't think I saw Will. I did see at least one like a person. I think she's like the former brand manager of Leica, and then I guess she's at House Special now. Uh, but it was really neat. And apparently, the director Mark Gustafson is really into cotton, um, or felting. I'm sorry, I meant to say felt. And it can look a lot like clay, and it really picks up a lot of light, even from a single source. So when he lights it with the final lighting, it just looks amazing. And I've seen at least I've seen Chris Boyer's been doing some stuff with felting. I saw like a blue donkey or something like that. Um,
So you're talking about making characters with basically a felt fabric, outer skin kind of a thing.
yeah, well, it just looks like felt.
Hmm.
It's all felt, and but it's very matte looking, which is probably what makes it attractive as an animation medium, and it bends easily. Um,
That's nice.
and it was a nice demonstration, and everyone was invited to go across the street to the watering hole, if you will, the bar uh, afterwards to mingle, and I didn't. I was kind of anxious about getting on the train before I missed the last one back, because I live a couple towns away from Portland.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
But I really wish I'd stayed and just like taken a cab home, because that would have been really great.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that just have an interest in stop motion, and it's kind of hard. Like if you live in the Midwest like me, that there's not very many people that do this. Actually,
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one, honestly. But so it's if you get the opportunity, you never know what can come of that. It's just always nice to have some connections. Um,
Yeah. When it comes to networking, I think my biggest problem is that my branding in the the kind of art stuff I do, the music, is a bit louder than I am.
uh huh.
And so I'm probably hard to find in that that din. Um, but yeah, I'm much more laid back than the marketing image would lead you to believe.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, marketing now is. Uh, I kind of question if like having Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff. I mean, it's helpful, but you ever notice that there's a lot of animators that they just do their thing, and when they're
Yeah.
done, they release it, and then that's it. You know, people watch it, they like it. Uh, but a lot of people that are into animation don't always have an Instagram and all that, and they still do just as well.
Yeah, I've noticed the really well studied, like veteran type animators, they don't have a high profile on the internet, and but their work does.
Yeah, the quality is what really makes them popular without having to almost need that stuff in some ways. Not that it's bad, you know. I think everybody really should have a media presence if you're always hunting for work. Um, I'm trying to think like what's that one guy? Jason Heights, is it? Or I can't remember his last name. But this one guy has uh, he makes stop motion animations that are similar to like H.R. Giger, is it? Um, like silicone characters and really intricate designs and large sets and stuff. And he's fairly low profile, low key, and but his work is really really good, and you don't forget it when you see it.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think I'm familiar with that
No,
particular animator.
I think it's Jason Heights or Height. Um, Nice guy. He a long time ago he sent me one of his discs, and you know it's super impressive and unique. You know, fairly unique. I mean, like I say, it's like H.R. Giger, but uh, it's just it's inspired by that, but that's you know that's as far as it goes. Um,
There
so
was an Aardman. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, let's go ahead.
There was an Aardman animator. I'm trying to remember his last name, but his first name was Jason, and he did My Chair.
Oh yeah,
A little, yeah. He did a little short called My Chair for the. It was pre, stop motion jam or stop mo jam. Um, it was on that one website that Eric Wright hosted,
um,
like before YouTube, before
uh,
Google Video
what was it called? Stop motion
Shorts,
stopmoshorts.com.
stop mo shorts.
Yeah, and that still exists. That's actually still out there, if I recall.
Hmm.
That website. It was down
Yeah,
for it
t-
was down, but I know he restored it. But I don't think he's updated that in a few years.
yeah, but I can't remember his name. I need to find out what it is, but yeah, it started with his first name was Jason, and he worked on several Wallace and Gromit projects.
Did
By the
he?
way, I'm saddened to learn that the voice of Wallace has passed away.
Yeah, Peter Salis. Yeah, I think he was like
Yeah,
98. He was old. I never realized he was that old. I mean, um,
yeah.
his
So he
mind
made
was
it
really
to
sharp.
yeah, yeah. He must have been in his 50s or 60s when he first, voiced Grande out.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a big loss. I mean, I don't think anybody can really replace that unique voice of his, you know, for the future of Wallace and Gromit. Um,
So you think they're just gonna kill off the property, or
do I think that? I don't know. I don't know. I kind of don't think they will, but I don't think that when you hear that voice, you know, the new person, whoever might do it, I don't think it's going to be as I don't know what's the word, grandfatherly, or I don't know what how to
It,
describe it.
it'll probably be Sasha Baron Cohen.
You think? That would be funny, actually.
And he will want to get into the lurid backstory of Wallace.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. He might show up at Aardman and interview like Peter Lord or something, and I'd like to be an animator. I come from Kazakhstan. Yes,
Kazakhstan.
I heard you do the animations.
Yeah.
You need to cover it up these female puppets.
Yes. Take this banana hammock.
Yeah, that would be scary. And I think Nick Park, he's kind of like this reserved character, as a human being. I don't know how he would
Yeah.
handle that. Like, would he find it funny or kind of hide somewhere?
I don't know. I mean, like I know it's a one piece, but I don't think I ever call it a onesie. I think maybe a halfsie.
A halfsy.
Yeah.
One never knows. One never knows. But
Hmm.
yeah, Peter Lord, and how long have they known each other? I think Nick Park and him got together on was it Grand Day Out? I think he finished or helped Nick Park finish that film. Um,
I think so. I'm wondering if I mean that was funded by Aardman, wasn't it?
I think it was like a student film, and then they helped to finish it. But I don't know if they actually gave
Yeah.
him the funds or just the space or
The
what.
space. So I'm thinking that he was probably apprenticing or interning for the studio at that time. Um,
That could be. I don't remember the entire story, but they've been together for a long time. And so Peter Sallis, uh, I guess he would have gotten rich, off of doing the voices for Wallace because, Aardman's pretty high profile in terms of stop motion. And don't they usually hire like if you think about what they pay Tom Cruise for a film, it's millions of
yeah.
dollars. I mean, I wonder if they kind of because it's well worth, the paying him for his talent or when he was still alive, of course. Um,
Yeah, and as far as storytelling, I don't think that Aardman has ever made a lemon of a movie. You know,
I don't think so. I think Chicken Run was pretty good. I think that was a pretty good box office. Um, I don't want to say hit because it wasn't super popular, um,
yeah.
but I don't think it did bad or they lost money.
I always kind of like the the let's see what's his name, Angry Kid. Um, basically Aardman's dark side or after hours kind of projects.
Well, didn't they do like Angry Kid? Yeah, have you ever seen Angry Kid before? Cartoon?
Yeah, I used to watch that on AdamFilms.com before it got sold to I don't know who has it now, and I don't even think it's called the same thing anymore. But I remember there used to be Adam Films, and then there was iFilm,
Yeah, that's right.
and both sites are gone now. But they were just a hotbed of independent talent. Lots of stuff from film festivals, and I kind of wonder, like, as far as film festivals go, whatever happened to the International Tourney of Animation?
That's a good
That's
question. I'm not sure.
that's where I first saw the Phil Tippett was doing the prehistoric or Beast, I think it was called,
Yep.
and there were a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of other, and this is like the 24th festival, so it was they'd been around for quite a while. Um,
Yep. It's there was like Spike and Mike, and there was that the International Tourney of Animation, and um, now there's a lot more, and it seems like because of the internet, there's also a lot of international film festivals that accept, people's submissions from all over the planet. Um, and I don't know. I mean, is it still relevant to submit your films there with YouTube and Vimeo and um,
Mm,
I
I'm
kind of
not
wonder.
sure. Um, well, the festivals aren't what they used to be. It seems like there are a lot of them are becoming more and more corporate. Um, so the independent animation is being put out by basically or sponsored by companies with a lot of money, um, and then that shows up in the voting. You know, for the winning animation.
Yeah,
I haven't really seen anything like Harvey Crumpet. You know.
that's true. What's it's almost like what is it about like in the 90s and early 2000s where it's almost like everything's become a little bit more like homogenous in terms of the style
Mm.
and the content of short films. In some ways, like Harvey Crumpet was super unique, and the style is like nothing that you've probably it's so um, different from everything else. And it seems like if I go on YouTube and I see a stop motion film, I can instantly tell when it's from Japan. I got. Have you ever noticed that? Like Japanese stop motion, how it
Yeah.
looks. It's so their personalities, their rigidness and conservative demeanor kind of comes through their characters, and it's so there's no curvature. Like, or how can I explain it? Like everything seems kind of robotic in the motions. I mean, up. See you later, Webster. Um, so it's kind of I don't know. And then if you look at American animation, stop motion, uh, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything that really stands out as new and different these days. That I don't know.
I don't think there's enough risk taking. What we need is just a kind of a, a hippie love child to grow up and in an affluent family and rebel against his his parents
Yeah,
by making
against the world.
extreme, risky and or risque animation, and then maybe it'll come back around, and because music is doing the same thing. It's been just, I mean, I haven't been able to have a career in it, and I've been making music since 2000, and I did have a minor hit song on the internet a few years ago, um,
Yeah,
which gave me a lot of unwanted attention. But it's like it's someone has figured out a way to make it impossible to climb the ladder of success with regard to music. Um, it's like they've created a system.
yeah. And it's like the auto tune is used so much now, and
And
um,
yeah, and it's like how dare these singers use an auto tune, call themselves singers, because it's I've seen a few memes about this on the internet too. So as well as I'm passionate about it, I also like to have a laugh at it because it's like if the auto tune's not working, you're not singing that night because you're not a singer.
yeah,
You're like a glorified dancer or something. Um, and I put in the time and the work, training the voice and actually learning all I could about singing and stuff. And it took like 3 years to get back the range I had before puberty. I think I might actually have a couple extra notes above it, but I just missed being able to scream in falsetto because it was fun. so, so I got that back.
Yeah, so you're not afraid to do that and to just kind of like push your own boundaries a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I like to keep people guessing. As far as well, I'll go to karaoke and sing like an opera song, and then I'll sing a rock song,
Yeah.
and then like a country song or something, um, and make it sound completely different. And that's a lot of fun. I mean, it's like acting. Um, and I used to act on the stage in plays and stuff, community productions.
Yeah, it's so in a sense it's kind of like cheapified the music industry because all the technology kind of gives you perfection in a lot of ways, doesn't it? Like if you want to hit a certain note in a certain key, uh, you could probably get pretty close, and then you know what? Like I say with the auto tune, you just you know what do you want it to sound like, and it makes the voice almost irrelevant, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but I think another thing is it can cause you to become overly confident about what your voice can do, and it can't fix everything. So, especially live, on the fly, it'll catch most mistakes, but it's not gonna, if you don't have um, the the training to sing live with stamina, to begin with a healthy technique, you can still blow your voice out, and then it's just going to auto tune the haggard tone of your voice.
Ah, I see. But in terms of recording a song, my son watches this guy called like Markiplier. Do you know? Have you heard of that
Yeah,
guy?
yeah, and that's interesting because I like to look at vocal range videos,
Yeah.
maybe just for the troll comments when someone says that's not his chest voice, that's falsetto. Um, and you can just imagine them tossing their hair, adjusting their lensless hipster glasses frames. But maybe twist their little mustache. I don't know, but or put their monocle back. You
Right,
know,
right.
if it fell out. I don't know. I'm a jerk.
But
But
it's kind of true in
basically,
a way, you know.
yeah. Um, I don't. I'm lightheaded. I don't even remember what we were talking about. Something.
I'll just auto tune. Like Markiplier
Yes.
is a character,
Yes.
you know, on YouTube. Like, I guess that's his real character, you know, like he's really that way. But I have my doubts a little bit. But the fact that you know they'll make a song for you know I guess the audience that they're aiming for is for kids, and it'll be completely auto tuned. Like every single syllable is auto tuned. So I'm
He
wondering,
auto tune.
do they sing it in a monotone way, and then just in editing they make the song match some pre-recording? Like I don't know how they do it, but it's you don't even have to really know how to sing if you want to make a song. You know, there's no talent to it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
I don't know. I hate to be stuffy about that, but I'm from the old school, grunge and punk where you learn to sing, um more than likely with an operatic background, and the reason for that is because it teaches you all about stamina,
mm-hmm.
um resonance and projection.
Yeah. Now
Uh,
see my take on it is that if you listen to an auto-tuned oh I don't have any water here. Let's use this. If you listen to an auto-tuned song and then you listen to for example George Michael, he has a tribute song to um Freddie Mercury. That's his name. Freddie Mercury sung this song called "If Anybody Can Find Me, Somebody to Love." You know, it's like a operetta kind
oh,
of thing in a way, but
you
not
mean
really.
You mean the one I can't pull off live?
Is that the one you can't pull off? Well, you know,
All of them actually. He's amazing, and Styx also. Their songs are hard to sing.
Sticks also really well.
I think it's all the syllables. Or it's all the consonants.
Well, the thing that I was gonna say is that George Michael, when he sung that, uh, his voice range was I never heard it. Didn't like when if you listen to Wham or something like that in the '80s, you kind
Yeah.
of think his voice is really doesn't have a good range at all. It's almost like he's a rap singer or something. But
Hmm.
when he sung that song, that tribute song on stage live, like every single note was perfect, and it was so full of soul. To it. There's a soul in there, and for some reason, the auto tune it's kind of like stop motion versus CG. Like there's a tactileness to it that you recognize, and there's a humanity there that you can relate to somehow. And it speaks to you on a completely different level than something that is uh, digitized and comes from a computer. Um,
Yeah.
and I know that one day the computer will probably be able to reproduce that accurately so that um, it fools you. But right now, it's just kind of like you're listening to a robot in some ways.
Yeah. I never used autotune at all, but I have always had a guitar effects processor, so I could turn on distortion and stuff like that at will. And the effect I like to use the most was probably the distortion through a simulated speaker, and also or a simulated amp, um, which I can demonstrate here.
Okay.
So basically, this sounds like a mic'd amp, maybe like a foot away from a fairly large cabinet. And then this isn't even. I'm not sure what this one is, but I think it might be even larger.
Okay.
And then this is the last one. Do you notice how the sound changes?
There is more of a bassy tone to your last spoken words there. So what are you actually doing? Like what is that you're or what is the purpose of the foot pedal? Is it for some kind of guitar distortion normally or
It was designed for a guitar, but I've always used it on vocals because it's cheaper. But my microphone wasn't line level, so what I did was I just put a high Z to or low Z to high Z um, transformer on the mic, and then that way I could get it as loud as it needed to be. And
okay.
then I also used to use well, I also in addition to that, I use the compression on the pedal itself, so I can turn the compression up so I can be farther away from it if I want.
I see.
If I turn the noise gate off, you can hear me from a good distance away. So this is a good way to record really low budget voiceovers and stuff like that,
I
and
see.
vocals.
So it's a cheaper way than perhaps some of the audio software out there, which is some of it's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with speakers and traditional equipment. Like for example, the lightsabers in Star Wars, I think, was a microphone just being put close to a big amp and moved back and forth, and the feedback would create like a that sound that is so unique. So I think it's kind of a rare art form these days. Another rare art form.
Yeah. When I was doing the Foley stuff for um, Castle Gardener,
Yeah,
some of his films, I was, and for Light as well, which I didn't know, but apparently it got into the film festival, the Northwest Animation Festival.
Awesome.
And Emily Baxter is a Canadian animator. So I can't remember if she was able to make an appearance there or not, but it was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the way I recorded the Foley was just using this setup, really. And I think I had a sampler at the time too, which would it just allowed me to get away from the computer. I could, kind of go out live in the field with batteries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, nothing I've got is really high tech. Uh, and this microphone I'm using is it's a Shure SM58. That's kind of the standard um, workhorse microphone that's used on everything except maybe drums. I'm not sure about drums. But I've got this other mic. Let's see if I can turn that one on.
Okay.
And this one, it has a different presence to it
Yeah, I noticed that.
because it's a super cardioid instead of a just a cardioid mic. The pickup pattern, the polar pickup pattern, it grabs more sound from in front of it, directly in front, so it's very directional, and less. It has a little bit behind it too, so it kind of it's kind of like a shotgun mic in a way, but it's not a condenser.
I see.
It's more like a stage mic. But rock singers tend to use these two mics, even in the studio. And so, like, if you ever want to duplicate a sound, a tone of a particular singer, if you use the mic they use, you're about halfway there. If your voice already similar,
That's interesting. So, you do a lot of like grunge kind of like what would you say that your um, like style is for singing and stuff? I mean, and can any of the people that are listening sort of duplicate, you know, the effects more easily with a microphone, or would you say there's some software out there that would be good for beginners, or like what's a good setup for somebody trying to do what you do?
well, I try to get everything dialed in as much as I can before recording.
Okay.
So before it ever hits the computer. So that I've got this pedal has EQ on it, so I can adjust the bass frequencies like that. I can take the bass completely out, which has a different kind of sound to it. Uh, but I like to keep it pretty much zeroed, in the middle, neither high nor low.
I
It's got a
see.
noise gate, and this isn't expensive. It's a Zoom G1 EXT G1N. I used to have a G2, but it broke. These things don't last forever, and they can collect dust and stuff.
Yeah. So if you were trying to, let's say, be a person that's talking over the radio on a starship to another spaceship, like you could probably get something that's pretty unique with a pedal like that. It sounds like.
Yeah, so like distortion, kind of like. Sorry about that. Uh, I forget. I've got to turn down the gain every time I turn the distortion on because it's already overdriving the signal. Let's see, trying to. Uh, no, that just turned it off. I can't remember how to change the. Okay, here we go. Different kinds of distortion. So we got this one.
That's pretty much like a police radio or something. That's good.
um, Mission Control to Major Tom. No. And this one's like an acoustic one. It's designed for, a guitar. So it's not going to have the same frequency output as the human voice does, which is why I use the EQ to kind of massage out the frequencies I don't want.
Yeah. So let me see here. Ron Cole says that Ben Burt accidentally dropped a mic by an amp, and that's how the lightsaber sound effect was invented.
Oh, wow.
So I guess
That's
it was,
cool.
Yeah, made a mistake. One of those happy accidents.
Yeah, well, necessity often dictates how something's going to go. Like if you need something quickly, you're going to get really creative. You can come up with some pretty clever workarounds in that way.
Yeah, and that was all pre-digital, I guess. Back then, it was all analog, wasn't it? All that, like after Return of the Jedi, it was probably digital, but or
Do you
Dolby Digital.
know?
Yeah.
Uh, do you know how Darth Vader's ship, or was it the X-wings? Sorry, I'm not much of a buff on this. Um, but the that crazy sound you hear every time they whip past the camera.
Uh,
Uh,
was it TIE Fighters or X-wings?
I think it's TIE fighters.
TIE
And
Fighters?
do you know how they made that sound? I think
Huh.
it was like they combined the sound designer combined. I think it was an elephant and a like tiger or something like that,
Huh.
or lion.
It's very possible because if you just take like a section of their voice, like a yell, like a "Rrrr," and maybe just
Yeah, that
somehow
that would be the
elongate it.
bass. Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be the bass frequencies, and then an elephant, elephant call would have the high end frequencies in it.
Yeah. That's very possible. It's a really cool sound. Um, I think what was it? Like the edits were all the sounds that came for that were from like a machine shop where they were stamping out metal like a auto dealer would use, or a auto manufacturer where they've got those large pieces of steel that they kind of sandwich into a die to shape it. I forget what they call those machines, but um, yeah, it's kind of cool that you kind of recognize the sound, um, and they like take common sounds and slow them down or reverse them or combine
Oh
them.
yeah,
It's really an art form. Uh, I don't
yeah.
know.
Fun thing to do is to time stretch sound samples and slow things down, speed things up, change the pitch until it has no, um, you know, any of its original like sound signature because the frequencies have just been, crushed. Um, and then there's like digital artifacting as a result. But you can get some really awesome sounds that way. And you can also get cool sounds by like blowing across the microphone and changing the pitch of that and maybe adding a bit of reverb. You can make it sound like a gusty storm. If you want like the sound of rain, you can get some rice and a piece of paper, or like parchment paper. It's kind of
Yeah,
crunchy, and then just drop grains of rice on that,
that's cool.
uncooked rice. Yeah, and it'll sound like rain. And then you can manipulate that even further.
That's so awesome. There was one of my friends on Facebook posted a video of a guy that uh, he was trying to make music, but it wasn't with instruments, like violins and things like that. He was using, I think they called it the Nightmare Box. It was for horror films. Should probably move my hand here. Can you guys even see this? Oh, there we go.
Nightmare box.
Yeah, a Nightmare Box, and it's basically like a wooden box, and they took different objects, like piano strings, for example, and they took the strings and they put it across like a bridge they built on there, and then they took like a cylinder, and there's some kind of fabric on it, and the cylinder would rest on the strings, and they could spin this cylinder around with a crank, and it would make all these like really guttural kind of sounds that are really haunting, uh, and then they took like these large, I don't know what they were, like flexible rods, and they were of different diameters, and they also hung those off the edge, and I guess they were weighted on the ends, so you would pluck it, and it'd be like, like this really bizarre sound.
That
And
that kind of yeah. Oh, go ahead.
but yeah, he called it music. Like there were no notes that you would think of as being music, but he said that what they were doing was for the horror films is it didn't matter if there were notes. What mattered was the emotion you got from that, and the vibes. He wanted people to feel a certain way, and they achieved it that way, which I thought was pretty cool.
Hmm.
So you might want to like Google that sometime. Check it out on YouTube. I think it's called the Nightmare Box.
Nightmare box. The demonstration you gave kind of reminds me of Tuvan throat singing or overtone singing.
Oh yeah,
That really grumbly sounding uh, tone.
like
There's
like in Tibet.
yeah, and there's some really interesting um, musical instruments in India that are made in a way that you wouldn't expect, and they all, a lot of them have this kind of like horn shape or this kind of like, I don't know. It's almost like a distant cousin of a trombone or a trumpet, but it doesn't sound anything like a trumpet.
That's cool.
Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, I could link you to that stuff. I don't think this chat lets you link anything.
Unfortunately,
I've
not.
tried it before,
Yeah, that's
but
YouTube for you.
I was checking out these. There's like thumb pianos. I don't know if you've heard of those, but they're it's just like this scrap metal that has been bent at odd angles and to form the keys, and then you just pluck them with your fingers, your thumb and forefinger, and um, just amazing instruments. I don't think a lot of people know about all of these, you know, kind of exotic types of instruments from faraway countries, but
Yeah,
they're interesting.
and you know what's sad is that if you ever watch like a Bollywood kind of film, or like my wife from the Philippines, there's a lot of these like horror films based on their own sort of legends and things. Um, like I think that the Ghost Girl is one of them, where it's just like they're just wearing like I don't know what it is, a white plain dress, and they have long black hair that's about 4 foot long, and it kind of hangs over their face. And they have all these superstitious beliefs about that. But the way that they make the films is it's like they try to emulate American films, because America, of course, is so influential. But if they were to use like all these unique, you know, details about their own culture, um, they could probably make stuff even better than we can. It's like you're saying, like we got like these strange instruments and all that. Um, but like as one example, We had Wonder Woman in the '80s here, and then they have Darna, which is like the same thing, but um, instead of one little horn shape on the headband, there's like two, but it's the same exact kind of show, uh, and it's like they could just come up with all kinds of cool stuff if they just stuck to their own culture. Um, so I don't know what I'm actually talking about, but yeah,
No, I get what you're saying. There's a purity in in a given culture that most Americans aren't aware of because it's when it's brought over to the United States, it gets watered down and
yeah,
um,
exactly, and
I find
yeah,
like the instruments of South Africa are also really interesting too. And I'm always looking for something that I can play if I can afford it. That I could play through a distortion pedal that would sound just like a guitar, but wouldn't be a guitar. So for the longest time, I was looking for, you know, um, synthesizer sounds that sounded like a guitar. And I've heard some that are really convincing, but those things are thousands of dollars. I've been in a couple studios and one of them in Burien. I don't remember how I met them. Probably at karaoke or something. But this guy is just like grinning and playing his keyboard. It sounded exactly like he was doing pitch bends and
cool.
arpeggios or whatever. It just sounded, like a guitar solo. It was so cool.
Well, you want to know what's really strange? Because we were talking about auto tune a while back and how like digitally, um, we can pretty much emulate any tone or pitch with the human voice with auto tune. Now what they're doing is they have these programs, and from what I understand, you cannot get these yet. And I think isn't it? I think it might be Adobe that created this. Let's see here. Make sure this face looks good. I think it looks pretty good. Um, you can take a section of a person speaking or singing,
Yeah.
and then you can interject your own words in there, and then it will emulate their voice exactly.
I can see how that could be used by the dark side, but
Exactly. Yeah.
I think a lot of fun could be had with it. But yeah, for the most part, I don't really see much good other than like maybe I don't know, bringing back the voice of a dead person, dead actor, dead singer. Um,
Yeah. There's good and bad parts about it. I would think that governments would use that in nefarious ways, but
yeah.
uh, and that's kind of like I wonder if that's a national security concern. Like if the government would have
Mm.
seen it as like, oh, now we can have Donald Trump say that he's had an affair and put him in jail or something. Like I can see people wanting to fake stuff constantly. I mean, you wouldn't be
Or
able to
like he
tell.
went to a Burger King or not a Burger King. He went to like I don't know, Starbucks and didn't tip. I think that would be outrageous. Actually, I haven't been tipping lately because of the fact that I never carry cash on me. So, and they don't have a way to do it, on your card. So I feel bad about that.
Oh, really? Maybe it's
Yeah.
different in Portland. I know that here in Missouri, what they do is like if you go to a restaurant, they will you put your credit card on the table and they take it in that little I don't know what do you call it, like envelope, and when they come back, they'll put a receipt in there that has an empty line that says tip or gratuity, and you can just fill in however much you want. Um,
The ones that you can put on your phone. It just like plugs into the phone or whatever, and you can the card swiper thing.
Yeah.
That can be set up to put tips on.
Oh, okay. So
But
I guess you guys don't have that. That's interesting.
I've seen them like at hair salons and stuff like that, but
Ah.
it's not very common.
Yeah, they're going full chip here. So like if you have a credit card with a chip, they're trying to transition all stores to this new chip system here, which is I guess better, more secure somehow, but
Huh.
I kind of doubt
Yeah,
it.
and until someone physically yanks it out of the reader while you're
Yeah,
waiting for it to approve.
I mean there's always
I stand there and I feel like I'm waiting for someone to snap me a football.
yeah, it's kind of I don't know. This new technology is like I know we went to Chipotle. Do you guys have or Chipotle? Do you guys have that in Portland?
I think so, but I'm not sure where. But I've had Chipotle, and I've had the like I've just had that as like an add-on sauce at what do they call that? Subway.
Subway? Yeah.
You can get that. It's interesting. I don't really know where it comes from. I think it's like Texas or something like that, but
I
it's
think
got an
so.
interesting flavor.
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
try anything twice.
well, the actual store, Chipotle, they were. We went there one weekend, and like the next day, I get a call from my bank that there's some fraudulent activity on my credit card, and I checked, and there wasn't. But what happened was something like 2,000 Chipotle stores had their databases hacked into, and all the credit card numbers stolen. And
Mm,
it's like they make all the chips really secure and everything, but hackers can just hack into their database, and so I don't know. It's like good and bad to have technology, um, but I'm just waiting one day for like a Leica film to be leaked, somebody to hack into Leica or something like that. And let's see here. Oh, so what do you think of this, Don?
mm.
What do you think of this? Are you seeing the live video?
Yeah, they look like the faces look like they're made of foam.
Yeah, they kind of do, don't they? It's not foam. It's just like a pastel yellow Van Eyck, believe it or not.
Yeah,
But the first face is a little bit dirty. This is my like main face that I used, and
yeah,
then you can see kind of how it looks when it's smoothed out. I think it looks pretty good.
yeah.
I mean,
I
considering.
I had a request recently to come up with a very matte version of Puppet Putty that behaved the same way, and I
Yeah,
wasn't able to do it. I can't figure like as soon as I take one of the primary ingredients out and try to compensate with the others, it just doesn't work.
really.
Yeah, so I don't know what to do about that. If someone wants something that's kind of like cake frosting in terms of its matteness,
Yeah.
but they still want it to be flexible. The I don't know. What I need to figure out is how to make the clay more stringy. Kind of like taffy. It needs more of a stretch at room temperature, and I don't know enough about chemistry or you know
Well,
quantum mechanics.
maybe it's a filler. Maybe they're using like micro balloons or something to change the way the light bounces off of it, cause or like maybe there's like a diffusion to the light through Cabasil or something. I mean, there might be something in there. So
Cabasil. The problem with Cabasil, and I'm sure Ron Cole would love to tell you about it because I think he told me warned me about it. It can get airborne just from the current of the air moving through a room that you
mm-hmm.
don't even notice, and it will just go into a permacloud basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's pretty
And
nasty stuff.
you don't want it in your lungs. And but it's interesting. Some fillers will roll right off each other, and others will clump up.
Huh.
And a lady who I just happened to be talking to while she was waiting for her bus, older lady. I remember she said after she hung up the phone with her husband, she said, "Husbands, you can't live with them. You can't sell them for parts."
That's very true.
She was funny, but she said that it had to do with the water content in the filler.
Oh, really?
And that's what made it. Yeah, tend to clump up more um, and behave differently than the drier fillers. But there's also the molecular shape. I mean, some are they kind of look like diamonds under a microscope, and others look like dots and or balls, and
Mm-hmm.
others look like elongated, kind of like a grain of rice under a microscope.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely influences their mechanical properties.
I see. So, um, yeah, Ron is saying toxic. Cabasil
Toxic.
is super thicker that a desperately small amount you breathe in will clog your lungs. Hmm. Yeah, because
Mm.
I do use Cabasil, but I use it in a way that's, I think, kind of safe. Uh, I keep it in like a, when you get those juice containers that you put the frozen juice in and mix up some water and stuff, the kind that has like a top that can turn, and there's like either a big hole or like a serrated kind of hole in there. Uh, I put it in that and I pour it out in quantities that I need, and then I have a fan that I put at the base of my garage, and it blows the air out. And anytime I use it, I mix it up right in front of the or behind the fan, and it sucks it right out of the garage. So I think there are some safe ways to use it, but I'm not sure if is it less safe than the micro balloons, or like what do you
Mm.
use then to.
Oh, on the microballoon tip, I
Yeah.
ran into someone who works I don't know if she'd want me to say her name, but ran into someone who works at has worked at like Ardman, and anyway, she admonished me not to ever use microballoons because they are bad for the environment. Like they will in water, they can kill animals,
Oh, really?
sea life. Yeah.
I didn't know about that. Is it micro balloons or the micro plastic micro beads? Like for because I think that the last thing I heard on the internet was that they outlawed those micro beads that they put in soaps to like
Oh,
exfoliate the skin.
maybe it was microbeads. I'm sorry, micro balloon industry.
Yeah, I think
I
there's
didn't
a
mean to.
difference.
Okay, it was maybe it was micro beads she was talking about. I've tried micro balloons. They are cost prohibitive, which makes them difficult to implement into any kind of formula, and still make a profit. So you can
Uh,
continue to make it and scale it, but um, they tend to be very dry, and it's also they've got to be measured volumetrically instead of by weight because they take up a lot more space, and they weigh a lot less.
yeah, yep. Um,
So,
that's I find like when I try to thicken up my silicone with the Cabicel, that it doesn't take a lot. Like you look at it and you think it's so light, there's like nothing there, but a little actually goes a pretty far way. At least with silicone. Like I don't know what with puppet putty if you've ever tried
oh,
to mix it in there or anything, but
mix it with silicone? No.
no.
I mean, both are polymers, but I just don't think that they would. I don't think a rubber and um, a hydrocarbon. I mean, there are some um, out there, like some truck tires or whatever. They have both in them, but well, they don't have puppet putty in them, I don't think. But hydrocarbon, vulcanized rubber, silicone, um, different grades of it, different hardnesses.
Yeah.
But every filler causes a different result, and has to be measured differently. Sometimes it has to be mixed differently. Like it can't be mixed in all at once because then the mixture just seizes up, and then it's impossible to melt.
Ah,
It's
okay.
weird. It's really weird. It's kind of like making cotton candy in a way. You've ever gone to a fair and seen
No, no,
the cotton candy?
I've actually I've experienced that with the silicone that I use. What's it called? I guess I don't have it on my desk. Um, but it's a brushable silicone. Actually, it's the one that I use to make this mold right here. If you want to thicken it for the purposes of like sculpting it onto the exterior of a mold that you're making, and you don't want it to sort of drip and sag, if you mix in just a little bit at a time, it tends to stir in really well. But if you put a lot in too fast, what'll happen is it kind of clumps and turns your silicone into a kind of like a, I don't know how to explain it, but you can't really work with it, which is strange. So I always kind of wondered, like, why does that happen? Like, why can't I just mix in a bunch at once and
Kind
mix
of
it in?
kind of turns your silicone into a shower loofah.
Yes, actually, it kind of does. Yeah. So it's a weird thing. I don't understand how it works, like you're saying, but I have experienced that, and maybe one day, you can write a book, your next book, how to make shower loofahs with silicone.
Co-written or ghost written by Mark Spess.
Yes.
Yeah, why not? Or illustrations by no. Yeah. So I'm still working at it, but there are some things I'm starting to recognize that there are limitations, and you know, no matter how much time I put into it, I'm still having trouble overcoming those limitations with
Mm.
regard to what I'm trying to do.
So, what about marble dust? I mean, do you think that perhaps is
No, because it throws the color off.
okay?
Yeah, it's very opaque, and so it will give you a lighter, more washed out looking color. Um, and although I have to say, marble dust it's more. I don't. Maybe it's not plastic. Maybe it's. I could be confusing that with like earth clay, which has more plasticity to it. Something about marble dust, though, it just seems to be finer, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And it's heavy too, which is a drawback if you're trying to make a lightweight putty,
Yeah.
and it's not really good for stop motion either.
Yeah, one of the things that's played havoc with making the puppet putty is no matter what formula it is, although kind of substituting one ingredient for another did actually cause it to be more meltable, and it also improved the volume because one ingredient expands when it gets warm, and the other deflates, so they kind of cancel each other out, and you don't end up losing any volume that way.
Ah, okay.
But without it, oh man, it's like jumping in a room near a baking pound cake. The cake falls,
Just kind
and
of collapses.
yeah, it just collapses in on itself
That's
because the filler is
interesting.
fluffy, and it kind of it breaks up, it disintegrates, and it loses volume in the process.
Huh. So,
So
what do you think is going on with Van Aken clay? Like, why do you think that when you, because I've noticed like some of the stuff I've gotten, I think I might have mentioned this to you recently. Maybe it was you or somebody else, where I made some purplish pink colored clay to
mm,
mimic the California raisin color,
yeah,
and when I poured it out after I melted it, mixed it all together, poured it out on a wooden, not wooden, a paper plate with some saran wrap on it. And after it cooled, it was almost like it became kind of like kind of what you said before about Newplast, about how it turns to chalk. Like it became crumbly and it cracked and it was almost not usable as
and
a.
that's wait. Did you say that you melted it and then poured it?
Yep.
Okay. It could be losing some of its binder when it's melting.
You think the binder itself is it?
Possibly. I mean, well, just to give you an idea, I used to when I was a kid, I'd get some Van Aken and I'd run hot water over it, like hot tap water,
Yeah.
to make it soft enough to smooth because I didn't want to go to the trouble of melting it. So I would in a double boiler. So I would just do that and I would smooth it onto a surface. But if I left it under the hot water for too long, it would fall apart
Okay.
and never come back together again, and it would look really ashy.
Yes. That's kind of like what I'm
You
talking
could
about.
actually see the filler in it. Um, so yeah, I don't really know. I mean, if wax is getting more expensive, it makes sense that they'd be using more filler. But other than that, I can't really do anything but speculate.
Yeah. So now, do you think? And I'm not trying to like plug your products, but I know that you made that translucent sort of puppet putty, which is like the toothy white. It's not really white, but it's more of this like a neutral, waxy color. I don't know.
It's I call it the dark white.
That's it, dark white. Yeah.
The reason for that is because I didn't when I created the labels. I printed them up and then I realized, oh, I need a neutral colored one. And I was like, well, let's see, I've got white and I've got dark green or whatever, so I just cut the dark part off and then I put it next to the white label and thereby saved money.
Got ya.
So that's where that came from. I also I didn't want to be like a Me Too, where like everyone's got their cream and their ivory. Or I just wanted to use a different term
Sure.
for it. But interestingly, more studios have been buying the dark white than anything else, and they're mixing it with their Van Aken. I'm not sure what percentage they're using, but I know that Webster's been doing that, and he's been recommending it to people he knows, and I've been getting referrals that way. And one studio recently bought like I don't know how like maybe 100 packs, except they needed both the colors and the dark white. Um,
Awesome.
and then I guess their project didn't get picked up or something. That like the client hesitated or something.
Oh, that's too
So,
bad. Is that
but they
was that the robot chicken one? Like or the
Mm,
shadow
I'm
machine or
I'm
what was
not
it?
sure. I'm not sure if it's uh yeah, I'm not sure what project it would be for, but
Oh, that stinks. So yeah, I remember
yeah.
you were excited about that.
Yeah, but they liked it. And they said they'd buy more again. Um but I don't know. I got really excited about the project and then it didn't happen. And you know,
That's a bummer.
yeah, but I just I gotta I got to assume that they're going to use the clay for something
Yeah,
somewhere down the road.
I would hope
And
so.
I kind of had a false start when they finished the California Raisin parody for a Simpsons opener, and and I thought I was like, that's Puppet Buddy, Puppet Buddy. It's looks great. Well, then I got contacted by the the head of character fabrication at the studio, who said that it wasn't Puppet Buddy, and it was like 3D printed parts made to and painted to look like clay.
Oh man.
Um, but I wasn't completely crushed because it was still the California Raisins, and you know, it
Yeah.
still looked awesome. Even though it was a parody of them, I thought it was just great.
Yeah.
Love letter to the '80s.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they would bring back the Domino's Pizzanoid and California Raisins. I mean, they were so successful. I wonder why they didn't stick with that. Like,
Well, um, I don't. Have you heard the story about why the Noid's no longer around?
no, I haven't.
Okay. Well, basically, I can't remember who told this to me. It might have been Will himself, but basically, what happened was that there was this guy. I guess he was like a paranoid schizophrenic, and he had that last name. And
Oh, really?
yeah, and he got really upset, and I think he like held some people hostage at a Domino's pizza place
That's weird.
because he thought, the slogan was avoid the noise, and he thought they were talking about him.
Oh, okay. Oh, man.
And
Of all
so
things.
that's why yeah, why they killed that character off. But
Yeah.
he was in Yo Noid or Yo, I think it's called Yo Noid or Yo Domino or something like that for Nintendo.
I think it is Yonoid, actually.
Yeah. It wasn't, yeah, I guess the game wasn't very good, but I don't know.
Seemed kind of cheesy. I've seen there's a guy on YouTube. I think he's called like the Angry Gaming Nerd or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he used to be called Angry Nintendo Nerd, and then he got like a cease and desist from Nintendo.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah.
he's got some good videos on some of those older games like the Noid and uh, like Contra and Mario, of course. Um,
Yeah. He's
and
very creative with and expressive with his swearing style.
yes, he is. Yeah, he's really fun to watch, but people are saying now that he's too laid back. Too laid back. So
Yeah.
people kind of like that.
Mellowing with age, as it were.
Yes. Or maybe too many bags of Doritos or something like that. I don't know what it is.
Oh, that's mean. But it's the super like puffy Doritos. So like there's he's eating more air than food.
That is
And
true. I think Webster, if he were still here, he worked on a Cheeto, like a Cheeto puppet, like a dinosaur Cheeto or something. Have you seen that?
yeah, yeah, that was for John Peters. I don't remember the name of the studio. Athena it was called.
Athena. Yep, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I really like that. That was a Halloween thing, I think. Um,
Yeah, it was really well done. And I thought they, for some reason, like used actual, Doritos to make it or something because it looked so real. But
oh no, that was Cheetos, wasn't it?
Cheetos?
I could be wrong.
Let me think. No, you might be right. I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, I
It
think
might be
that one
Cheetos.
because I can't imagine a dinosaur shape, like a Dorito, or vice
Yeah,
versa.
yeah. No, you know what I'm thinking of, like the cheesy Doritos that look the same, like the reddish
Oh,
kind of powder they put on there. Yeah, you're absolutely
yeah.
right, though. I'm totally
Okay.
losing
Well,
my
there's
mind.
been stop motion done with Doritos too. Um, it's kind of funny that there was a contest for Cheetos a while back. I think about a year and a half ago, and I'd been eating a bag of them, and I saw that contest. I was like, you're supposed to send in the most interesting looking Cheeto that looks like something to you. You know, kind of like the way some people see Jesus in a scrambled egg, and
Right.
you know, so or like is it chug guava uh, in like I don't know, coffee or cappuccino? Yes,
Yeah.
in the froth. Well, that's deliberate because they actually have artists who do that. But no,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, so there was this contest, and I found this really really interesting looking Cheeto. It looked like this girl on her cell phone, and so I was going to send it in, and then I had it in my backpack for a long time. I had it wrapped in a piece of paper towel, and just been meaning to send it, and I never sent it. And the other day, I found it, and it was like it had dirt on it.
Like green
So I think
mold and
I threw it
something.
away. Yeah, it looked like a decrepit construction worker's earplug, and
Okay. Now that is something I don't want to envision, Don. Hopefully it never.
uh,
Ooh. So you,
exercising my humor muscles or this yeah
so you should
evening.
you should send it in anyway and call it that. You know, this is a decrepit construction worker's
No,
earplug here.
I stepped on it and then accidentally swept it up and threw it in the garbage.
Oh, okay. That's good. You have saved humanity.
Yeah, from the vacuum. Well, I saved it from the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, that's ooh, uh, that's not good.
But you're giving me an idea. Like, if I ever wanted to do a food version of Puppet Putty, maybe I could just get a bunch of Cheetos and crunch them up into a fine dust, and then
Yeah,
use that as the filler.
that
Um,
that would be good because you can make like the puppet without an armature.
yeah, but I wouldn't want to mix that stuff in too fast because then I'd have to use it as a shower loop, and it would replace the silicone one.
It's like, wow, you smell so good today. What is that, Don?
But it'd be better for the environment, I think.
Yep. Save the whales. Use the Doritos as a filler. And the Cheeto Doritos. Make it better.
Yeah, that's not off the wall at all.
It might work. You should actually try that, I think. I mean, maybe that is the happy accident that will save us from global warming. You never know.
Never know. Yeah.
It seems like all the great science inventions are like that. Like some guy spills his coffee into some uranium, and then it's the cure for cancer.
Yeah.
It's
Or
like,
it's a smaller version of the atom bomb. Oh, there was a guy, I can't remember what his name was, but I don't think he went to school for this or anything like that, but he built a like nuclear reactor in his basement.
yeah, I saw that on the internet. And it was all legal, wasn't it? It wasn't like he was in trouble for that.
It was legal, yeah, and it like worked. And I'm like, wow, that it's just mind blowing.
Yeah,
What, you
and
know,
to think that
what
you can do that, and that means a
that
terrorist can do
any,
it too.
that anyone has time to do it.
Yeah, Do
I
you
work a
remember where he
full-time
got it?
job.
Like, do you remember where he got his materials from? Wasn't it like from like what do you call them? Smoke detectors or something like that? Like, I know he got it from some weird place.
Imported from Kazakhstan. Yeah.
Was that it? So from Sasha?
No, no. I mean, I at first I thought that was a made-up country, but then I looked it up on the internet. It actually does exist.
No kidding. I
Yeah,
thought it was
and
made up too, like as a joke, you know.
no, like and supposedly it was bringing more tourists to the country. That movie.
That's cool. Well, that's in a way that's a good thing then. You know what? That guy is so funny. There's a part in one of his movies where he interviews Ron Paul. You know who Ron Paul is, right?
Yeah, he's a politician, right?
Yeah, yep. Libertarian,
Oh
end
yeah,
the Fed, end the Fed, and get on the gold standard kind of thing.
yeah.
Um, I actually liked Ron Paul when he was running, so I uh, I got involved politically to because of his non-foreign interventionist foreign policy, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I'm getting mentally messed up here, but so he Sasha went to one of his congressional offices, I guess, and he goes in there, and he's like, we just need I want to interview you and everything, and so I've got this hotel room booked, and we're gonna set up our cameras, and we're gonna talk to you, and this and that, and it's gonna be great. I come from Kazakhstan, and we want to know about your politics. And he goes into the office, and he starts to get like seductive, towards Ron Paul, like doing these crazy things, like putting his leg up on the bed and this kind of crazy stuff. And he makes a move on Ron Paul, and I guess Ron Paul is really homophobic. So Ron Paul had like stormed out of the room, and I always thought, I liked Ron Paul, but after I saw the way he acted and didn't take it very lightly, to say the least, it just totally changed my opinion about him, as a person. And I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like if you ever get involved politically, some of the characters in there are really strange. Uh, Good for animation, story material.
Yeah, I think someone should do a stop motion about Trump with the fake time covers.
Did you find that
That
funny
might be
too? I mean,
interesting.
it's like the most ridiculous thing ever. And it's not just one. There's 14 spread about his, I guess, like his golf resort. There's like 14 of them on the walls, not just one. I just,
Yeah, and he complains about fake news.
I know it's the most
He's
ironic
creating
thing. Which, by the way, Don, this film is actually partly, you can see here, the reason why this character exists is because of Donald Trump, actually, this king character.
it.
So,
Oh,
this,
really? Does he have the hair configuration?
no, but he's orange, as you can tell.
Oh,
So that's kind
um,
of that's the clue because of the fake tan.
oh, okay. I'm not looking at him right now. I was like, why isn't he orange right now?
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe there's a delay, but I guess the audience can tell. But this is kind of the character that. So the story that I'm doing here is based on, um, you know,
Oh, yeah.
being divided by politicians. Dividing people instead of sort of trying to bring people together and all of that. So.
So you're gonna shape his oh, I guess not. You already have it sculpted. I was gonna say you could shape his crown like Trump's hair.
That would be kind of fun.
It's the
Yeah.
right color for it.
Yeah, that's a good idea, but yeah, I think I'll probably keep it this way for now, just because I don't want it to be,
Yeah.
like offensive, politically offensive
Yeah.
to people and stuff. But You can kind of
So
see
he's
him.
he's is he like at a hot dog roast? Is that what there's
Well,
something he's got
uh,
scepter?
no, this is actually like his. Let me see if I can put it here. You can see here's his arm. So it kind of looks like a hot dog, but it's actually his arm. And
Oh, so he had his. It looked like he had his arm with a stake through it.
yeah, nope, no, it's gonna be. This is like a. This is an apple. So what they're doing is there's this apple tree. They're a.
Oh, okay.
It's a really super simple concept. So there's like a.
I guess it helps to know the context.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, okay, so the way the story goes is there's this land, and there's one side that is kind of destitute and dried up and brown and lots of like dark tones, gray tones, brown tones, that kind of thing. So it's a dead wasteland. And then the opposite side is lush, and uh, one side has a tree which is dead, and the other side has a tree which has lots of apples. So the point of it is, so the king of this civilization wants to um, protect the apples from the other side, which is evil, of course, the outsiders, and so this story is like this mother character here. Let me show you a photo. So this mother has three kids, and so they're all twins, and that's just because it's easier for me to make them, so they're duplicates. And so they get hungry and they want to eat. And so the tree in their land is dried up and dead, so there's no apples. And so she goes to the other side, and when she does, one of the characters gives her some apples, and they get along just fine. And then they're taught to hate the other side, by the king. And the king is like, we need to protect our apples. They're gonna take all our apples, and we're all gonna die. And I don't know what he's actually gonna say yet, but it's gonna be like kind of along those lines. And it's gonna be based around like the build the wall chant that Trump was doing for a long time, like saying Mexicans are evil and they're not bringing their best over here. So it's not based around like laws and stuff, but it's based around just like humanity and understanding people for um, who they are as
Yeah.
human beings, and that we're really no different than anybody else, in terms of what we want. We want to eat, we want to
Yeah.
have a house. So it's like a moralistic story, but it's gonna be laced with comedy. Lots of funny stuff and little antics and um, so basically when they're gonna build like a fence around the tree to protect it, and she's gonna get underneath, dig like a trench underneath the tree, and go up to get these apples. And when she does so, they rebel against her because of what the king says, and they're all angry. And then they're gonna go to where her house was on the other side of this land to go and destroy the evil people. And when they do so, they end up finding the three little kids, and the three little kids are hungry and had nothing to eat, and they had to do some like soul searching, and they're like, oh my god, we were just gonna go in here and kill these three little kids that we thought were the enemy, and all they wanted were some apples. So that's basically it in a nutshell. So all these characters are emojis, emojis with bodies, which I don't know if that still counts as an emoji, but um, so that's kind of what the idea is, the concept.
Hmm. Yeah, and that was all in the book, or is that something that you came up with? Some
No,
of the story,
I
right?
just came up with it. I thought it would be kind of a good theme, good story, simple, direct to the point, and
Mhm.
just kind of countering the way people are feeling today towards other cultures and stuff. Um,
Yeah, I don't understand any of that. I think it's all needless, you know.
well, the reason
They,
why,
they hate the mistreatment.
yeah, it's really sad. I mean, the way that it works and the techniques that they used politically to, with that kind of rhetoric is to just divide people. For example, like if you study Nazi Germany, what they would do is they would divide the races, and what they would do is say like, well, this race is better than that race, and yada yada yada, and turn people against each other. Because when you're divided, you can easily politically, just take over. Um, and so they would say, well, if you're white and you have blue eyes and blonde hair, well, you're the master race, and we've got a job for you in our political position. And so you can get people on your side and make promises which you ultimately will break. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a lot of that kind of thing, and people fall for it. They think that they're superior because of what they say, and ultimately everybody wants the same stuff. They just want to be happy, and that's it. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people say that politics don't belong in animation, but all of the stuff that I used to watch as a kid, even like Bugs Bunny cartoons and stuff like in maybe even Mickey Mouse at some point, especially during the war, World War II, they really had a lot of political undertones to them.
yeah, yep, they did. Even Ray Harryhausen worked on, I think, some military films, like propaganda and stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know of any political side that I agree 100% with. So I'm kind of I'm on the fence, between parties.
Yeah, same here. I think it's
I
all
just
crazy.
yeah, I just don't believe. I think of politics, generally speaking, as a form of propaganda in itself.
Yeah, it's really sad, that people that are wanting power, they use a lot of techniques to manipulate, and it's like if you don't recognize it and you buy into it all, it sounds really good. It really does, promises of this and promises of that, and but you gotta look at the actions and what they do, and just be kind of not caught up in the emotional aspect of it. I think people really get caught up in that, and that's where it's dangerous.
Yeah, I just look at the result. Um, like for example, there was a lot of push towards a higher minimum wage. I think was it like $15 that got passed by maybe this time next year or something like that, and it's supposed to go up towards like $12 an hour, at least in Oregon. Um,
Oh, okay.
and like I don't. I thought it was the 1st of July that it's going to happen, so it hasn't happened yet. But it's going to be interesting, like how divisive this is going to be towards or for the people who have been at the same company for many years. I've been working for where I've been working for the last 15 years, and the raise they're going to have to like basically outpace the minimum wage if they want to hold on to me because I don't want to get paid just a little bit more than what a new hire gets.
Yeah, that's true. To be fair, right?
Yeah, and I don't think anyone wants to, you know, because why did you put in like a quarter of your, or a third of your life?
Yeah. And wasn't it, I read in the news, like in Washington State or somewhere, they had raised the minimum wage, and a lot of people are saying, well, it's going to destroy jobs, and people are going to, have to close up shop because they can't afford to pay their workers. which I imagine might be true in some cases. But what they found, this is an actual scientific study. They said that it didn't affect businesses at all. That it was all like, they were able to do it, no problem. So I think places like McDonald's and fast food restaurants will not have a problem with that at all. Uh, I mean, we went to Burger King today here, and uh, there was a line of probably 10 people in front of us, and they all had like little kids and came in as families. And so, if you think about it, I mean, a fast food place could probably make how many hundreds of dollars in an hour, profit.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So I don't know. Um, I think it's good. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Um, and everyone's been raising the prices in the last few months. I think as of like March 1st. So, and that was in anticipation of the minimum wage hike. So, I'm kind of surprised that there's no bills being bandied about to counter this uh, legislation that passed the higher minimum wage.
Mm.
Because, if they're going to mess with healthcare, they might as well mess with, just be 100%, disgusting. um, I don't know that's the only thing really that riles me up is just the result of decisions being made that aren't in, in the best interests of anyone but the people who already have a ton of money and capital and you know
Yeah, like Walmart, for example. I think.
friends in high places. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like the I don't know the whole like banks giving their their financial directors bonuses, whether or not they um, I don't know whether or not they sabotage their patrons, or whether they do a good job or not, they're still getting huge bonuses. It's like, why?
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. In no other job have I ever encountered where you don't do a good job, you don't get a you don't get a bonus for doing a bad job.
Yeah, it's very unusual.
So,
Yeah, I think
but
that pretty soon people are gonna have to figure it out, because with robots, automation, and artificial intelligence and everything, it's all gonna come to a head where we're gonna be like,
yeah,
okay, half our population doesn't have a job. you know.
yeah, and I don't like the way I'm seeing people with mental illnesses just being tossed out on the street, and I encounter them often at work.
Yeah.
And it's like it used to be that we would call the police and they would come and give them a warning or a ticket or arrest them. But now, because it involves mental health, it's this is a medical thing. So now they are pushing for an ambulance to come
Mm-hmm.
check them out.
Yeah, that's you told me that story about the guy that was always kind of heckling you guys, and what was
Yeah, he
that?
was circumventing our policies, and you know he didn't care about us losing our liquor license, so he had people buying him beer after he was three sheets to the wind, and that's illegal here. So,
Yeah, I think
um,
everywhere actually.
oh yeah, and it's the third party sale to someone else.
Yeah,
So
that's not good.
underage and whatnot. So and I had to go to court a couple times as a result of calling the police and filling out an incident report and all that stuff.
That's never fun.
And yeah, and
Did that guy
so
ever like threaten violence and stuff? And didn't you say he
yeah,
was?
he did. He did. Yeah, he threatened to have me killed, and so I. That's when I transferred to another store, and then there was like a beer run over there, and then I put in my 2 weeks notice. I hadn't used any of my vacation time from 6 years of working at the company, so I cashed all that out, uh, and I parted company with good with positive uh, relations.
Mm-hmm.
But that cashing out that vacation time caused me to suddenly have $2,700 I didn't have before. So I went to Seattle and I hung out with Bruce Bickford, and
Cool.
I came very close to sitting on one of his sets because he's got very narrow walkways in his garage.
Uh, so what did you? What was your impression of Bruce? I mean, when you went in there, I mean, did was he accepting of the fact that you used armatures in the past and um,
You mean when I first met him?
yeah.
Well, I guess it's a little known fact, but he does use armatures. He just uses very simplified armatures. He makes like a loop of wire. He's
Yeah.
got two prongs, and then he sticks the prongs deep, deep into the clay surface, like it might be like 6 inches thick or something.
Yeah.
Um,
That's cool.
so
Because
yeah,
a long time ago, he told me he never used an armature, like a proper armature. Maybe that's what I
no,
was thinking. Maybe I was incorrect in thinking he never used any
because
armatures.
while the garage is always very hot, the basement is very cool, and he rigged the lighting so that it only comes on for the camera exposure, and then it
Oh,
goes off again. And the reason for that is to prevent heat buildup um, on the set, keeping anything from drooping, given the fact he doesn't use armatures.
right, right.
And it works, and you would think it'd flicker like crazy, but I think he might have like a power conditioner or something like that.
I remember seeing that setup, but I can't remember if he does. Can't remember.
Well, he's got things that he's barely used. Like there's, I think he had like an Oxberry animation stand,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
a multi-plane that he got from Disney.
Yeah, he had a whole bunch
Yeah,
of really awesome old equipment and cameras. I think he was using like
yeah.
a Bolex
He
Rex.
was using, I think it was a Bolex. Yeah, I don't think he's ever used anything but 16 millimeter.
Yeah,
But
which I mean, if he could use digital, I mean, I'm sure he could crank out stuff, much faster, more accurately. And you know what's weird though is his animation is so smooth for the scale. Did you ever notice that?
yeah.
Like it almost looks like there's a computer putting in between frames. It's unusually precise.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, I wonder if not having an armature has helped with that. There's no spring back at all.
Yeah. So that might be one of the positive things about not using one. I mean,
Yeah.
with your puppet putty and stuff.
And with the putty, it's kind of like you bend it, and you almost expect it to sound like aluminum being bent or steel. You know, you expect to hear a creak. Like like just because you can move it a tiny tiny amount, and it doesn't spring back at all.
Yeah, it's actually awesome. I mean, that's
But I just wish it were softer at room temperature, softer and didn't get even softer when you touch it with your fingers, and I wish it was more flexible at room temperature as well. Uh, because lighting, like it or not, it's going towards more of a uh, what's that? LED lighting.
Yeah, that would be if you use LEDs, there's no heat issue there. The
Yeah.
heat issue would just be with your fingers,
Well,
from
yeah. There's
manipulating.
there's heat, but it has heat sinks on it on the bulb. So there is a lot of heat being given off, but it's also being absorbed by the base of the bulb.
Oh, you mean like the like one that you'd put in a regular lamp, like an incandescent?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Sorry, I forget. There's different kinds of LEDs.
Yeah. Yeah, the really bright ones I guess do
Yeah,
require a heat sink, don't they?
yeah, and then they've got the ones that are like an array. It's like
Mm-hmm.
3 by 12 or something like that. Bulbs,
Yeah, and they've got like those flat
super bright
panels too.
flashlights.
And I'm curious if the flat panel ones heat up as much as the incandescent style because
Yeah.
um, I've got LEDs that run on 12 volts and they have resistors, but the heat is really super minimal. Like I'm curious if uh, maybe there's a multiplier effect. Like if you put enough of the small ones together, it equals like a big one in terms of the heat.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Yeah, what's really amazing about those lights is that the color temperature isn't as kind of cold looking or kind of bluish or greenish as it used to be. It's getting closer and closer to the standard incandescent. I think it's what I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it's something like 3K or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, I think that, and also, what's really awesome? And I know I've linked to one of these bulbs on our Facebook fan page in the past, but you can get for only like $10 on eBay bulbs that are maybe like 40 watts, and they have like a small, what do you call it? Like a remote control for a TV, and it has just basically maybe 12 different buttons, and each button is a different color. So one bulb can be green, it can be purple, it can be yellow, it can be red. So it's almost like you don't need gels if you can get the proper bulb.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't need those very specific gels that change the color temperature,
Yeah,
daylight to yeah, incandescent and back again.
yeah. And even like if you want it to look like it's fluorescent, or something, you could probably there might be something similar that's out there, um, which is really cool. And I think the price is coming down and the options are more. So uh,
So it's going to be harder to use my clay basically because it's designed to be heat activated.
mm, yes, unfortunately, I guess so. Yeah. Uh,
So I need
yeah.
to,
If you're
I
thinking
need to
long
get
term,
going on what?
if you're thinking long term, yes.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of the idea. I'm actually wondering, do you want to bring the book back? Because the unfortunately the patent route is way more expensive than I thought it would be. I attempted to save for it, and um, I didn't even make it a third of the way to the what would be needed. Um, and lifetime, it's even more. It's like there's these systems, like I said earlier, that are set up to keep people from ever following, their dreams. Um,
That's up to you. I mean,
yeah.
I think that it's a great book and it could help a lot of people, but I totally understand also if you're worried that it might make your job obsolete if some big company wants to use a similar formula or stumble upon it based on your book. Um,
Yeah.
so that's a tough one. I don't know. I don't know what's really
Mm.
best, but Um, maybe you could. I don't know. You could try to like simplify it, make it more simple in some way. Take out stuff that you feel would kind of impede on your current formula. I don't know. Like, what
I
do
don't
you?
really think I don't really think anything impedes on it. If anything, those formulas aren't accurate enough, um, because they weren't intended to be a final product. They were intended to be a starting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And hopefully, I made that clear enough.
Yeah.
So then, like if the formula is broken, okay, what can I do to fix it? What can I add to it or take away from it to get it in balance?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at it that way, then I would say it's probably a good idea. I mean, it might bring you in some extra income, and you could, use that
Yeah.
income to even buy materials to improve on what you've already got. Um,
Yeah.
if you think if it's necessary, like what we were saying, with heat activation and all that kind of stuff, um, it's not a bad idea. You know,
What, to bring the book back?
yeah. If you look at it like what you're
Yeah.
saying, it's like not meant to be a end all be all book for
Yeah.
coming up with the perfect formula, then it's probably okay, I would think.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it
mean,
was basically intended for people who wanted to dabble a little bit and kind of experiment.
yeah.
It wasn't like if you have my book, you'll be able to start your own factory. 'Cause I don't even know how to do that. So how would I be able to teach someone to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, my only concern would be is, can they connect the dots? Can they look at that book and say, well, based on, what this material does to the actual texture of the clay, maybe puppet putty is kind of like this, maybe it's kind of like that, and then, you know, but I don't know. Is anybody really that interested to make clay? I mean, it seems like you're one of the very few people that does it anyway. You know,
Yeah.
like you kind of
Yeah.
obsess over it almost.
Well, I mean, like like you said, it's a side income. So
Yeah.
I take making it seriously, and I think about it a lot. And but I also think about music a lot and songwriting and mostly vocal, improvement. So I'm dividing my time between the two things,
Yeah.
because most of the time I'm doing stuff that I don't have any choice about, which is working. Um, which it's not terrible, but I don't want to do it for my whole life. I I have ambitions,
Of
and
course.
uh, yeah, but it's just I don't know. Maybe it's about finding loopholes in the systems that have been designed to keep people from becoming entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So, like what I like to call red tape.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
And it seems deliberate, and so I think I'll always be kind of pushing up against that. But I don't know. Maybe at some point I can come up with a fun song that people relate to and want to hear a lot. And if that, I don't know where that's going at the moment. If you want to be a working musician for a living, it's kind of terrifying, as far as how many someone like actually wrote down a pie chart and showed how many downloads you'd have to sell every month, um, just to make minimum wage,
Wow. So how many songs was it?
in the thousands.
In the
And
thousands?
that's per like website, that streaming service, because you only get a penny for every 100 downloads or something like that.
Ooh. Yeah, That's not nice.
it's just set up to screw the artist. But
Is that
and
like
then
on a like what is it, Spotify, or like is that like on a
yeah, there's Spotify as well. None of them pay very well, and CD Baby, I haven't seen a check from them in years.
oh really?
Um, yeah, so but I keep thinking that performing live will be my salvation because uh, people have to pay to get in there, but shows still get bootlegged, and I don't know. But I'm trying to stay positive about it. Uh,
Yeah. So that's the big thing. You know, like how do you turn singing into a profit? I mean, what
yeah.
um
Some people say, well, it should be free. Well, were my instruments free? Were my microphones? Was the vocal training for like, maybe 20 books or something like that, and private vocal lessons? Was
yeah.
that all free? No, it wasn't. So why should what I make with that stuff be free?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the old saying, you know, artwork is work.
Yeah. And
And
it's like, let's see, someone did a comparison recently to um, other professions. Like, what if we expected doctors to work for free and so on and so forth? And it was
yeah.
pretty interesting, the outrage that idea generated. Uh,
Yeah, that's you're getting back, you know, that's more like a political thing,
Sorry.
like
Um,
universal health care. And what is that, healthcare as a right, you know, which I disagree with that too. Like it's not a right, you know. uh,
but I'm not in this case. I'm not speaking politically. I'm speaking occupationally. Like, artists and singers and musicians are expected to work for free, but um, doctors and lawyers and you know they command a high salary.
yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
that's it's frustrating because I've watched the last 2 decades of life slip away, and I'm going to be hitting 40 pretty soon.
Yeah,
With what kind of feels like nothing to show for. um,
yeah, like you want to have an actual accomplishment under your belt. And
yeah,
um yeah, you know, that's the thing. Like I'm doing this here, you know, with clay animation, and this was my main goal for most of my life, is to, you know, create clay animation films and get good at it, maybe make a studio, hire people, get work all the time, you know, doing it. And uh, like the perfect stop motion utopia. And, you know, real life shows you that it's even someone like Alba Garcia, who, um, you know what Alba is, right?
yeah.
Like Fantasiation and all that. Um, so she was at a point where she was trying to, you know, get her film out there, and she did an Indiegogo campaign and got some funding. And then it turns out like her studio space was too small, so she ran into a
Oh,
lot of problems. And uh, she thought that
yeah.
people would help her out, like, you know, Travis Knight, or, you know, Peter Lord or somebody, because they all know her. And she was really frustrated, like, you know, I know all these people and no one's helping me out, and I just want to sell my story to, you know, somebody and move it forward because I really believe in it. And like you know, she mentioned her age, like, you know, I'm 40 years old now, we need to be doing big projects. And it's like this middle age crisis, you know, that we kind of,
Yeah,
I
I
think.
I had my midlife crisis a few years ago because I'm precocious, and no, I'm just kidding. But like I think when I hit 30 or something like that, I was just like, oh wow, like where's my wife? Where's my car? Where's my house? And it's not because I'm forgetful; it's because I just don't have those things. And you know, And how do I get out of the paradigm of young adulthood into kind of more like the golden years, um, in a natural progression of things. And I'm not really sure. But on the other hand, there's been a lot of things that have happened that have been completely random. They just like came through the ether, and I never expected to go to school for animation. Uh,
Right.
so that kind of fell in my lap, and I never expected to make clay for studios either. So I guess um, I'm still interested in seeing how it all turns out.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I mean, for me, my income now comes from, of course, selling Puppet Putty and the online store, but uh, my sculpting of heads for people, because I get a lot of requests for that. Um,
yeah.
it's kind of a weird thing that I never anticipated doing, but I sculpted my son's head. I made a YouTube video, and some people saw it and said, "Oh, can you make me, this character's head? I have Fred Astaire, I want done for a mannequin." And I did it and kind of learned as I went and got better at it. And luckily, people hire me to do that because there's a demand for it,
Yeah.
and it pays pretty good. So maybe singing is maybe not something that will bring in the money, but maybe there's like voice acting, uh, something else that there's a larger demand for that's more rare than.
Voice actors have not been getting treated very well, by the big gaming companies, especially.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, like they I think they wanted something like unionized wages, and um, and there was also the fact that they were asked to do these extreme vocals for several hours a day. um, and it was just it was wearing some of them out.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. So, is this a new phenomenon or?
I'm
Um,
not sure if it's not new, then it's probably been kind of unknown for a long time. Um,
yeah.
but like I was all like gung ho to um, get into voice acting and stuff, and then I saw how the voice actors were being treated. And it's like, nah, I can wait. I'm gonna wait until like the kind of theoretical love child grows up and you know wants to. I mean, like there have been like hippies who became very successful in business and in the entertainment business. For example, like Art Clokey. Um, I'm not sure if you would call him a traditional hippie or if he was kind of more like a Buddhist. But
Yeah.
this guy seemed to genuinely care about people, and he gave a lot of animators their first breaks. You
Yeah.
know,
He was a Buddhist, and kind of like like my film here. Ron Cole got mad because we were talking about politics, and he left. So I don't know if he'll
but
actually
that's
watch
like
this, but
that's part of the story, though.
yeah, it's part of the story. And Art Clokey wrote stories that were similar, and that was part of the universal appeal of his characters. And it was all
Yeah,
based on it was based on Buddhist themes, which is actually something that a lot of filmmakers use. Like Yoda from Star Wars was all that Jedi stuff is all based on Buddhism. Uh,
hmm,
it's a thing that
interesting.
yeah, it's based on like the Force is, if you know the Buddhist terminology, it's called the Dharmakaya. It's like this penetrating all-encompassing force of, like, not creation, but
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, it's like, because I'm a Buddhist myself, so I can talk about it, I guess. But
Mhm.
it makes you look at people differently, and makes you look at time differently. Makes you look at your relationships. Uh,
Materialism.
Materialism, yeah, it makes you look at basically everything differently. And but ultimately, what Buddhism is a study of your own mind, and through studying your own mind, you can pretty much know other people's minds. And so, uh, mindfulness training, where you sit in a,
Mm.
on your bed and cross your legs, or if you're, meditating, or if you're just walking down the street, if you're mindful, and you're watching all your emotions and stuff, you tend
Yeah.
to understand how other people are. And it's so weird of a thing that you can do that, but um, yeah, I don't really know where I'm headed in my.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned mindfulness. Back in 2010, I had a big falling out with a friend on the internet, and I don't like she. It was someone that we were gonna uh, work on something with. I can't remember exactly what it was, like a commercial or something. Remember that? Like she was gonna do a voice for us. Um,
Was I
but we had a
involved? I don't remember.
yeah, but we had a fall. Yeah, well, yeah, we had a falling out, and it was over humor posts on a comedy site we were both part of, and uh, and she read things into the jokes that weren't intended. Um,
Oh, okay.
so she basically freaked out. So then I thought, okay, there's something really really wrong with me because I'm anxious about this, and so I actually went to the doctor for anxiety, and they told me that they were gonna like set me up with I don't know what you'd call them. It's not a natural path, I don't think, but it's like a doctor who teaches mindfulness, basically,
Oh, okay.
and that helped a lot. And part of that was getting rid of the blue lenses in my glasses and swapping them out for rose-colored
Oh,
lenses,
yeah. Okay.
which I get compliments on constantly. Um, but it really kind of lightened up my perspective on everything because it made things look brighter and cheerier than you know than they might actually be.
No kidding.
But it hasn't caused me to be complacent either. It's just kind of it's leveled me out. It's evened out my moods. So
That's
going
good.
to that mindfulness doctor really helped a lot. Um, and so did taking iron,
Ah, okay.
because apparently my Crohn's disease had caused me to lose so much blood that it would basically kill someone if it happened all at once. But because it happened over time, the body got used to it.
Yeah.
And so like around 2014, I think it was, or the fall of 2013, when I got really sick. That was before, well, that was the first time I went to the hospital. That was, I was misjudging, you know, conversations, um, misunderstanding things. And it
Mm.
wasn't in the the clouded thinking was due to the iron anemia. It was causing memory loss and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, no kidding.
So yeah, so I was really glad to get that diagnosis of being an iron anemiac. And,
Iron deficiency. Yeah.
and then when I got together with my last girlfriend, she always made sure to feed me stuff with lots of iron in it.
So that helped your anxiety levels to come down a bit, and
Well, I actually at the time I was also drinking a lot of energy drinks, like to stay awake all night, like three energy drinks and like three rock stars or whatever.
oh,
It didn't
okay.
matter what brand it was. It was all really high in caffeine, and that drove my anxiety through the roof, and it also made me really kind of grouchy. Um, but
Oh,
once I stopped doing that, you know, my personality came back, and I was more easygoing.
I see. That's good.
So
So what
it
it
required a lot of personal change. Hmm?
so what it like when we're talking about mindfulness, what was your shift there? Like when you're sort of um,
Mm,
observing
it ga-
yourself, like
yeah, it gave me the ability to look at situations from a distance and not jump to conclusions when there's missing information.
yep, yeah, to kind of like add on top of something
Yeah.
that's not there.
Yeah, like for example, um, this person didn't write back. Why didn't they write back? Is it because it's something they read on the internet, or is it because they're busy, or you know, a lot of times it's just because they're busy.
Yeah.
They
Mm-hmm.
don't have time. So I try not to read into things as much as I used to,
Oh,
and that also helps your anxiety go down. Um,
yeah, absolutely. And did you ever try like the meditating stuff at all?
Not really. I mean, people have gotten lost in their own heads through too much meditation,
Yeah, that's true.
from what I've heard.
Yeah, it can be risky.
Um,
It's not all good, because you basically have to confront your own issues, you know, and sometimes
yeah,
those issues come out during meditation that you don't really even know is there.
yeah. I basically just I found when I started making modeling clay, found it kind of relaxing. It's like you watch those videos that people say are really satisfying
Mm-hmm.
because they trigger something psychologically. And for me, it's really satisfying to watch wax melt.
Yeah.
And for most people, it'd be like watching, ice cubes go to water, or paint dry on a house. But yeah, for me, it's not the worst thing in the world to watch wax melt.
Well, see, that's
Makes
like a
it,
meditation process in itself because if you're
is it?
meditating, yeah, because what you usually do is you watch. Um, there's a lot of different forms of meditation, and
Yeah,
one of them is like you light a candle and you just stare at the flame as it flickers. Uh,
yeah,
and if your mind wanders from the flame to a thought, you go back to the flame. And you can do that with your breath as well. Your breath, a picture, like in Tibetan Buddhism, what they have are those like mandalas, and
yeah.
it's like a painting of different dimensions and stuff, and you stare at that. So it's just like focused concentration. That's something that a lot of people do.
I know it has a lot to do with belly breathing, doesn't it? The meditation.
Um, it can, sure. I mean, there's different forms, like I say. Pretty much, what I understand is as long as you're focusing and aware of what you're doing in that very moment, it's called meditation. So if you're gardening or like working on puppet putty or anything, uh, where you're
Listening to a podcast
listening to a podcast, yes, uh,
while working on Puppet Putty.
yep,
Um, it's kind of interesting the way what you're doing at the time that you're creating something kind of influences what you're doing, like sculpting or whatever. For example, if you listen to really dark, rock music or something or gothic music, you're what you're sculpting kind of tends to look sinister,
Yeah, it's
in
like
my experience, anyway.
same with me. Yeah, like if you're feeling aggressive, your characters will look aggressive in some
And
ways.
they'll be full of tools.
Yes. Uh, I mean that's pretty much how it is for me too. Like you might add horns to your cartoon characters and pitchforks and stuff. Just happens
Yeah,
naturally.
yeah. When I was younger, um, I uh, I was in a funk. It was like I think the final year of high school, and the thing I was animating or working on was it was a clay graveyard.
Oh really?
It was really dismal. Yeah, and my mom saw it and she got worried about. Uh,
It's like
but yeah, it's that's when I was animating some weird stuff. I had and this was on a video recorder, so I was just back editing. I'd take a second of video and then I'd back edit it. Um, I'd in on the playhead, I would go forward a couple frames, maybe one frame past the one I wanted, and then I'd go to record pause. And then when I recorded, miraculously, it edited right to the frame, so it was just stacking, uh, seconds of video on top of each other, offset by one frame each time.
okay.
This was before frame grabbers. Um, and when I
So
talked to Hmm?
what kind of camera were you using back then again?
Oh, it was it's funny that I still remember it. It was a Panasonic SLV 696. I'm sorry. Yes. I believe that's right. Or I could be mixing up two different cameras I had. Or a camera and a VCR. I had a Sony SLV 696 Hi-Fi VCR and the camera was a PV-21 Panasonic. That's
Okay.
right. Um,
So it
and
was like probably kind of a grainy image, and you know,
yeah, well,
covered up all the fingerprints and all that stuff.
my family wouldn't let me move the family VCR into my room. I don't even know why. So I mean, why wouldn't they want the family VCR in my room? But and I'm joking. But so I went to Radio Shack when they were still around, and I got a pair of I don't think you'd call it rabbit ears, but it was like these pyramids that they were infrared, and so they would take the signal of the remote control and they would beam it across the house and then aim it at the VCR while it
Okay.
was in its glass enclosure, um, glass and wood enclosure. So in that way, I was able to manipulate the VCR from across the house. And and my dad had helped me run cables underneath the floorboards of the
No
basement.
kidding.
And to this day, those cables are still there.
No way.
Haven't been used for decades, but they're still there. Um, but you get a lot of signal loss going over like I don't know, maybe 30 feet of cable run. So what you'd have to do is get an RF amplifier at one end. I think I don't know if you boost it on the end that you're sending from or if you do it from the end that you're receiving at.
Right.
Of course, I had cables running both ways, so um, I think I had it boosted on both ends. And the signal did come back kind of grainy, but it didn't come back blurry.
So it was like
So
a coax
it
cable,
did not
right?
look bad. Yes, it was a coax cable. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty high tech for, TVs and stuff back then. That was like the way to hook everything back up. Like there was no Netflix and Wi-Fi. There was, it
Yeah.
wasn't
Yep.
digital.
Yep. It's weird to have come from that time and see how things have progressed, you know. I'm still not completely up on technology. I don't have a high-tech cell phone.
Oh, you don't. So, are you
No.
using like Vonage or just a landline or what? Like, what do you?
Right now,
Yeah.
I'm using my I'm using Facebook and I'm my guitar pedal and
No,
my
I mean for your phone, your actual phone.
oh, oh, for my actual phone. Sorry. I'm using a uh I call it a fake berry. It's a or if you want, you can call it a dingleberry. Because it's not a very good phone. It's really cheap. Um, and but it looks like the layout of a BlackBerry phone.
Oh, okay.
It's got the QWERTY keyboard and all that, but it's very cheap. It was a track phone, and it doesn't have internet right now because they charged me too much. Like they took my minutes away for no reason, and they did that several times.
Oh, that's not good.
One time I was on your store site, and another time I was reading an article about singing. So it doesn't matter what site I was on, the minutes would just disappear, and you know, basically they were like, "Well, you can't prove that you didn't use the minutes."
Uh,
I was like, "Okay, well, you can't prove I was ever your customer."
yeah, it's silly.
So I had him turn my number off. So right now I just get calls through Gmail.
Oh, okay. So you're pretty much bypassing that whole corporate aspect in a way.
Well, yeah, because it didn't treat me well, and I give things like three chances, and then once they've struck out, I'm done with them.
Yeah.
And
Uh, the phone that I use is a Asus Zen phone. You can get them for about 150 bucks. They're a smartphone and have all the bells and whistles. They're about $700 cheaper than a new iPhone. you know,
wow,
but they do exactly the same thing as any other phone would do. Um,
yeah,
I don't really know why they charge so much for, maybe it's just the brand name or some kind of battery technology or what it is, but they
yeah,
just
and
charge
it's
way too
weird
much.
because like cell phones are getting more expensive, computers are getting cheaper. Like, did you see that video about a guy who put together a Hackintosh for like $80?
I saw somebody post that on Facebook, but I didn't watch it. So, was it any good?
Yeah, like he made this inexpensive computer that had much more. It was much more powerful than even like an iMac.
No way. Really?
Yeah,
More powerful than an iMac?
but he was probably running Ubuntu or something like that.
Yeah. That's kind of amazing. So what was
Yeah,
his final cost? You said 80
eighty
bucks or something
bucks.
for the whole thing?
Yeah, and he didn't mention an operating system. I mean, if you want Windows, like Windows 10, I think it's like 150 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not really too fond of Windows 10 because on my computer it doesn't want to wake up once it's gone to sleep. Like it
Mm.
will freeze, and I've been having problems with like Google Chrome freezing for the last few years now.
Oh, okay. And they kind of did they force it on your computer? Like the update? Did you have like a
No,
Windows?
it was it was the fear of the NSA leak,
Oh, okay.
the hacking tools,
Yeah.
and so like anyone with XP or below, or even Vista or Windows 7 was at risk of
Yep.
anyone who had these tools, and anyone could download them for
Yep.
free. So
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
big
that's
big
that's
screw.
what pushed me to that. Hmm?
Yep. And but there's a lot of great tools out there for like speeding your computer up on Windows 10. There's one. It's called Spybot Anti Beacon, which I installed on my computer when I got my new computer, and it stops all the communication between your computer and Microsoft, except for like the important stuff, like updates and things. There's a lot of stuff that runs in the background on Windows 10 that just takes up a lot of CPU and memory and just a ton of stuff. And I think that their goal was to like run advertisements on your computer, and Windows could essentially be like Google in a sense. So if you visit Google, you're kind of giving up your information, and they give you ads, and they make their money. And so with Windows, they had the same philosophy, I think. And so they were like forcing Windows 10 on everybody. Oh, I just made this dirty.
It's weird though. Windows 10, like it, yeah, it's hard for me to use. Its search assistant couldn't even find itself. Let's see.
Yeah, it was really slow.
Oh, Windows or Microsoft started offering free upgrades to Windows 10 after I bought mine. So
Oh, you actually bought it, you mean?
that was very quaint of them. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I
okay.
bought it. I bought it from a guy who runs a computer store down the street.
Yeah, see, for me, I had Windows Vista 64-bit as my former operating system, and I didn't want to actually put Windows 10 on my machine. I had heard so many bad things about it, and
It's like it hasn't even been beta tested, and it's getting shoved out, for
yeah.
public consumption.
So I avoided
They
it.
could have hired me.
Yeah, they should have done that. But yeah, it's on my computer now, so there's no going back for me.
Yeah, it's like a virus. Um, um, and it's weird when you first boot, it says something like, "Do you want to use an older version of Windows?" So it gives you that option, and then you choose the option, and then it's like, well, you don't have the other version of Windows.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not smart at all.
have you thought things through? But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's one of those things where then they start to build software around that operating system, and even if you don't want it, you kind of have to go with it because everybody else is going with that, with Microsoft and Apple to keep up, and it just becomes obsolete, and there's almost like no control on the consumer side at some point. If you want to get like the latest Wind or Sony Vegas, for example, it's going to run better on a 64-bit operating system. So if you're with Windows XP or something, you're left in the dust, totally left in the dust. Um,
uh, I'm curious what's coming next after 10.
After 10, huh? I'm not sure, but I think artificial intelligence will probably create an operating system one day. Um,
It doesn't even know how to paint.
it kind of knows how to paint.
Oops,
Kind
I didn't just mean to make a reference to that paint program you showed me the other day, or
of.
that site,
Hey,
which
I
is
like that program.
terrifying. No, it's not a pro. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that site that um, who was it? Joel Brinkerhoff, um,
Oh,
checked it out
I know what you're
too, and
talking
he
about. Yeah,
did he did a better job than we did.
yeah, he's pretty good. He's a good artist.
uh, Although it did look like either Fred or Barney had hair in his mouth. But that's not his fault. That's the program, or that's the yeah. But
Yeah.
that's AI basically, and I'm scared. Because have you seen what it did to Bob Ross's paintings, videos?
Yeah, yeah. Like
Like
animal
eyes,
eyes.
eyes everywhere. It's all eyes
Yeah, it's
on
actually
him.
creepy. Super creepy.
And if you watch a Tupac video and you run it through that thing, or it was subjected to a Tupac video, then his song "All Eyes on Me" would make perfect sense.
That's true.
You'd have
Yeah, it's but artificial intelligence is able to write its own languages, and it's basically you input instructions, and it evolves like a human brain, only it remembers stuff better, and it can find solutions that humans can't find rapidly. Like it's actually created, like some people have devised a artificial intelligence to write a new language, which is similar to human spoken language, but it understands through evolution. Like if you think about, for example, how we spoke in the 1800s versus now. Most of the stuff that they said, the common words, are not understandable today, just through evolution. And so,
I'm really yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, so I mean, just artificial intelligence is just able to almost like go forward in time and create new stuff that it's just really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm really interested in like the etymology of language, spoken language, and like vowels, for example. Like the some people you hear this a lot actually, especially like brighter voices, twangier voices from like New York and San Francisco. They don't pronounce their O's as O's; they pronounce them as "o." And
Yes.
it's interesting. Like it's louder, it's more resonant, um, and it's also kind of endearing. It's like
I
the
was,
way it's
it's amazing you bring that up because I was thinking that exact thing today where they're trying to use voice recognition for like speech to text programs and stuff like that. So if you want to like talk into your phone and it comes out as text,
yeah,
I was thinking that why don't they ever consider that? Like maybe they should have a thing where you input, well, I was born in Spain, but I speak
yeah.
English, and then that would just
They have to
adjust.
they have to account for the dialectic differences because of the fact that every language has an accent, and it makes it really hard to use like even international IPA. Um, for training singers and for the English. I was talking to a a guy who'd taken choir for several years. I can't stop running into these choir people like everywhere I go. Every karaoke place, it's always like, yeah, I took choir for 12 years, and like they're just like they've got tattoos all over, and you just don't expect them to have been a choir singer. But
Yeah.
this guy I talked to last night told me that he had sung choir a long time, and the English language is the hardest language to learn when when it comes to singing in the fourth octave. And the reason is that the resonance changes, so the vowels have to modify slightly away from what we would use to speak with. And the problem is that most English vowels are not, monophthongs. They're actually diphthongs. They're two sounds, um, which makes
Huh.
it really hard to sing.
Really?
Because, like, yeah, because if you want to go for like an O sound, high up the range, it's going to want to go towards an
And
I never thought of that.
if you analyze, like if you've ever you've done like lip syncing, right? Animating character talking, and whenever they say an O, you ever notice their mouth doesn't go straight to the O? It's got and listening to the audio frame by frame, you hear an first before the O, and
Yeah,
after the O, you hear an oo.
I guess because of the way your lips over time are making the
Yeah,
smaller shape, but
yeah,
it takes
aperture.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So basically the O for us is kind of like a triphthong.
I
So it'd be
see.
a three-part vowel, and that makes it even harder to sing. And that's why, and also certain vowels don't exist on certain frequencies. So like in the fourth octave, like an O might go towards an and then an aw, um,
Huh.
as an awful. Um,
So there's no way
and
to
then
adjust for that, or maybe there is.
you just have to, yeah, well, you have to figure out what vowel works best, and it can't be a diphthong. It has to be a single, it has to be a monophthong. So like aw is it sounds weird, but it's a monophthong. And the the language I find the most interesting when it comes to studying vowel sounds is Danish.
Danish?
Because if you ever listen to them to a Danish speaker, native Danish speaker explaining how to pronounce their vowels, their pure vowels,
Frame deleted.
it kind of sounds like they're like they accidentally stubbed their toe and they caught themselves before they like said ow. So it just sounds like they're like, oh, you know and I'm not trying to make fun of them. It's just it's very different sounding to the vowels that you know
Yeah,
I've always been familiar with.
never thought about that. And I
And
guess
some
I think
languages,
they're from, aren't they from Germany, most of them?
I'm not sure, but some of the German, like the umlauts, those vowels tend to be like in Motorhead. They tend to be very um, specific to that particular language, and you might not have an umlauted sound like an O vowel in, say, French.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes singing even harder to teach, and it's also very individual as well. Like some people have darker voices, and so the way they modify their vowels, they would go to a more back vowel. So like instead of an it would go more towards an or an a would go more towards an o. Um, at least on lower pitches, the higher you get, it has to go more to an a and an But so there's different resonance strategies for different sounds you want to make.
Yeah, that's cool.
Uh, but
But
it's individual and it's hard to learn. And for the longest time, I thought that I had a really bright voice, so I was always concentrating on like these bright vowels. But discovered that my natural speaking voice it has a little more bass to it. So if I want my high range to sound more like my low range, I need to go more towards a back vowel, more kind of you know without swallowing the sound completely.
I see. Because I was thinking maybe you could like take your like your hand and make like a circular ooh shape or something, and right when you're about to say it, like punch yourself in the face, boop, just to counter that slow motion, facial change or something. Like there might be some kind of bizarre secret tip that
I think I'd be full of bruises, and I'm just glad I'm not on blood thinners because that would be no fun.
but you never know in the future.
Because you get bruises anyway from brushing your hair. So
Yeah, I gotcha.
yeah.
That would not be good. But
I
anyway,
think I think
Don.
I was going to say I think the longer this conversation goes on, the more surreal it's going to get,
Yeah,
and
it's
possibly even abstract. What do you
well,
know about cubism?
it'll
No,
it'll
go
end
ahead.
up like we're talking in just grunt noises and stuff. Like,
Well, that's what I'm limited to after a full night of working, anyway.
your
So,
brain just shuts down. Like, ugh, I had
yeah,
enough.
I can't even order a hamburger. It's sad.
You just kind of like fall into the drive-through window. Like, you know what I want. I want the hamburger.
Exactly. Yes, I speak in my Batman voice, and they lock the window tight. I don't get it. But no.
They're like, he's back. Lock up the shop.
I think I posted the joke a few years ago. You might have seen it on Facebook, where I was like, when I'm not when I've had to talk too much or something,
Yeah.
I can barely order a hamburger, and so instead of ordering a hamburger, I order what it's shaped like, and the color and the texture, and they have to guess what I'm talking about. No, that's a joke, but
It's
um,
like, I want that green stuff on top. It's
and then and
crunchy.
then I'd take too long to order, and they'd be like, "Could you hold on for a second?" I'd be like, "Sure. Are we on the phone?" So I think that was when I was really anemic.
Very
I don't
mentally
know.
distraught there,
It's
yes.
fun.
All right.
Oh
Well,
yeah, that too. But no, it's just when I had low iron and would get confused easily.
yes. Well, I tell you what, Don, it's been almost 3 hours here, and
Yes.
we have lost all our viewers.
Hopefully drove them away. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, it's getting late, so everybody's probably
They
hopefully
have
hopefully it's
bedtimes.
because they're tired. I don't know.
They have bedtimes. Quitters.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But anyway, it was fun talking, and
Yeah.
anytime you want to come back on and drive my visitors away, you're more than welcome.
Well, there's an art to doing that. Most people, you can't get that many people to do one thing um,
Yeah, that's
on
true.
command. So
That is a good point. If you can get
at
lots of
least
people to do one task, you're probably pretty
that's what
successful at
that's what Frank Zappa said about Alice Cooper.
it.
He
But
said he wanted to sign him because he was able to, like, when the band started playing, everyone got up and left.
well, they're good at it, so hey, you gotta give them credit. At least they can do
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it actually was pretty fun talking, and you
Yeah.
did keep my mind occupied. I got 6 replacement faces completely done. Took three
I knew I
hours.
was being used. No, I'm just
Yes.
kidding.
So I gotta pay you. Is that what you're saying? Is that what it's come down to?
um, I'll take a dump truck full of doubloons.
Okay,
Um,
I can
no.
handle that. All right. So anyway, yeah. I mean, I guess I guess there's 2 people watching, which is cool. So I want to thank my audience. If you've stuck around, you are the champions for sure. But we
Of
are
the
gonna come
world.
back next week at Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central. So if you want to stop by, I'll probably make at least, hopefully, 3 more faces, and we'll talk some more. All right. So see you guys all next week.